Welcome back, guys. This is a series of previous years question paper analysis, ethics, UPSC GS4. We were discussing 2015 paper. Because of technical error I could not able to continue. Now in this video we are going to take up the rest of the questions in the section A of 2015 paper. In the next video we are going to discuss the case studies. Right, let's see the third question. In the last video 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, those questions, almost around 4 questions were over. We were discussing third question, and because of the technical error, technical issue, we had to stop at that point of time. Now we are going to continue the discussion. Now the question is, a mere compliance with the law is not enough. The public servant also have to have a well developed sensibility to ethical issues for effective discharge of duties. Do you agree? In a simple way, it is not only the law, it is not only the statutory aspects, even along with laws, regulation, rules, we need ethics also. We need these moral values also for the public administration. Do you agree? So if yes, you have to give the reason. If no, you have to give the reason. If no, it means that yes, only laws are sufficient. Constitution, statutory laws, regulatory bodies, only those things are sufficient. Values, moral principles, these are not required. So answer is no. If no, you have to give the explanation. If it is yes, you have to give the explanation. So do you agree? And then explain with the help of two examples. There are two criteria scenarios here. In the first scenario, you have to give an example for an act which is ethically right but legally it is not. And the second example, second scenario where act is legally right but not ethical. So let's answer this question. Let's answer the first part of the question. First part of the question is ethics necessary along with the law? This is the question, and you have to substantiate your point of view, right? So the point here is, we have constitution, we have statutory laws, we have regulation, we have rules, we have controlling bodies, vigilance bodies, all these things. After having all of these things, on top of it, why do we need ethics also? See, already there is an established criteria. In these criteria, so many controlling and the coordinating measures already are there with respect to public administration, with respect to civil services. On top of it, why do we need the ethics? That is the question. And answer is that, see, and another important aspects I was explaining in the last video also. See, even in the 2013, 14, 15, 16, even 17, 18 questions also, question paper also, directly or indirectly, this question is coming every single year. That is importance of ethics. In a simple terms, it is nothing but importance of ethics or importance of values. Why do we need values, foundational values in ethics? That is third chapter, aptitude. That topic, it is coming in the examination every year. So that the same explanation you have to give here also. So why do we need ethics? What is the necessity of having ethics? The first and foremost aspect here is discretionary power. Discretionary power is that, see, I told you that there is a constitutional, vigilance body, statutory, rules, regulation, everything is there. On top of it, we still have a lot of discretionary power. Public administration, civil servants, they have a lot of discretionary powers in their hands. See, laws, rules, regulation, there is an external accountability, and discretionary power, these external accountability does not comes into the picture. It is your control, you can do whatever you want. But if there is an internal accountability, if you have this value system, then you don't compromise this discretionary power, you don't misuse this discretionary power. So that is the reason you want ethics along with the law. And another thing is, a lot of loopholes are there. Even in these established statutory bodies, rules, regulation, a lot of loopholes are there. And if you are intelligent and if you are cunning, you can misuse the loopholes and you can turn the system, entire system, into a corrupt one. So even in order to maintain that sanctity of public administration, in order to not to misuse the public administration, civil services, you need to have a foundational values, you need to have a moral principles. And then, see, I told you that there are a lot of regulations, rules, these things are there. Even having all these rules and regulation, there are situations where you will get into an ethical dilemma. In those kind of ethical dilemma, in those kind of situation, you have to make a decision. How do you make a decision? It is not the law that is going to help you, it is the values, it is those moral principles that is going to help you. So to deal with ethical dilemma, to deal with conflict of interest, you need foundational values. And also, in order to bridge the trust deficit between citizen and the administration, citizen and the civil services, the gap can be reduced with the help of foundational values. See, foundational values like honesty, integrity. I am a civil servant. If I have these values of honesty, integrity, people are going to trust me. People know that he is impartial. People know that he maintains that neutrality. So the equality, justice, fairness will be there. So this is going to bridge the trust deficit between citizen and the administration. And public administration, it is dynamic in nature, and having these values, it will keep you humble, it will make you down to earth, so that you can give your 100% to the public administration. So these are the reason, along with law, we need values, we need moral principles, we need ethics in administration. So these are the reasons, right? And the next part of the question, explain with the help of two examples, two scenarios. You have to give examples to explain this. One is act is ethically right but not legally. Let's take up this act is ethically right but not legally. As an example, you are aware of public procurement of food grains. Usually what happens, government procure these food grains. Government is going to procure it. After procurement of this food grain, this procured food grains will be used in the PDS system, public distribution system. So it will be used. This is the legal way of distributing food grains. So procurement happens and it will be stored somewhere, and from there, that storage, it will be distributed to people through the PDS. This is the arrangement. But so many cases, what is happening in the storage facility, these food grains, they are getting rotten there, and a lot of fungal infection it is going on with respect to these storage of food grains, and rats, mice, they are eating away these stored food grains. Now see, legally you are not supposed to divert these food grains to some other activity. It is illegal if you do it. If I am an officer, if I know that these food grains are getting wasted, so what I do is I divert these things for some other activity. See, ethically this may be right. I divert this food grains for the midday meals. I am giving these food grains to the orphanages or to the vridhashrams. So I am somewhere, I know that food is getting wasted. Rather getting it wasted, let it help in some way to the people of India. This is what my thought process. But legally it is not correct. Ethically I am right, because it is wasted, and I have to make sure that rather than getting it wasted, it has to come into help of the people of country. So ethically it is correct, but legally I am not supposed to do that. So I have to follow the law. So this is an act where it is ethically right. I am handing over these food grains for the midday meal facility. Ethically it is right, but legally this is not right. So this is one act. And the second example, act is legally right but not ethically. Legally right, it is that a woman who belongs to a tribal group and she is old, she is uneducated, she comes to you, you are an officer, she comes to you and she asks for a BPL card. And in order to get that BPL card, a person supposed to submit 10 documents to the government of India. This is the procedure, this is the legal aspect. And me being an officer, I have to be objective, I have to show my objectivity. Rule is that everybody has to submit 10 documents. But here you know the real situation. The lady belongs to the tribal group and the lady, she is uneducated, she is an old lady, she don't have any documents there. Now if I reject it, legally it is right because she is not giving the documents, but ethically is it right? Ethically it is wrong, because I know that the real situation, I know the real context. Still, after knowing all these things, I did not help that lady. So here act is legally right, but ethically this is wrong, because I should have showed that compassion, I should have been fair in the approach, but I did not do it. I stick on to the objectivity. So act is legal, but it is not ethical. So this is examples, two scenarios or two examples, right? Let's move to the next question. The next question is that how do the virtues of trustworthiness, fortitude get manifested in public service? Explain with examples. Here very direct question. There are two virtues have been given here. One is trustworthiness, another one is fortitude, and you have to explain from a public service perspective, and you have to give an example. For every question you have to give an example, whether they ask or don't ask, give the examples. Right, let's start with the trustworthiness first. Trustworthiness, what is the trustworthiness? Trustworthiness is a dependability, trustworthiness is a reliability, trustworthiness, it is being honest. So trustworthiness, it is being reliable, being honest, being dependable. Usually trust, how does one person is going to trust you? See, I say something and I commit to my statement. I tell you that tomorrow afternoon I am going to meet you. I'll meet you there around 2 o'clock. I'll meet you at some place. So other person is waiting there, and you have to show up there. If you don't show up there, will next time the person is not going to trust you. If the person knows that you are not going to stick onto your words, you are not going to your actions are not going to stick onto your words. So if I have to be called as trustworthy, then I have to be reliable, I have to be dependable, then I have to be honest, and I have to show that attributes of commitment, I have to show the attributes of consistency. The same thing from the public perspective also. Even in the public service, if a public servant is considered as a trustworthy, then there should be a reliable factor, there should be a dependable factor, and the person should be honest. Again, there should be consistency, there should be commitment. Whatever I say, I have to follow that action. So there should be a consistency and commitment. Consistency is with respect to what I say and what my actions are. Commitment is with respect to public welfare. So this is trustworthiness. And how is it get manifested in public services? How is it going to get manifested? Let's see that particular aspect here. See how exactly trustworthiness it is going to manifested in a public services. See, if there are any conflict of interest in public services, it is my if I am a public servant, it is my moral duty, it is my moral obligation to disclose the conflict of interest. So by disclosing conflict of interest, I am going to avoid situation which benefit personally, right? And second thing is, if I have to be called as trustworthy, if I have to maintain that trust, then the basic qualities I have to pursue. What are the basic qualities? I have to be honest, I have to have that quality of transparency, I have to quality of accountability, I am answerable to my actions. So these are the basic qualities, this is the basic value system I need to have. Me being a public servant, I have to be honest, and I have to maintain that transparency, I have to maintain that accountability in my decision making, and whatever the commitments I make, I have to fulfill that commitments. If I am telling that I am going to build a particular infrastructure, maybe a school, within 6 months, I have to build it and I have to give it to them, and I tell you that I am going to repair this particular road in 2 weeks, then it is my responsibility and commitment I am giving. I have to make sure that road is repaired within 2 weeks. So that is commitment, that is consistency. And there should be impartiality and non-partisanship. When you have impartiality and non-partisanship, it means that you are treating everybody equally. There is no discrimination, there is no distinguishing treatment to one person to other person. When you stick on to the rule of law, people are going to trust you. People know that this person is impartial, so they are going to trust you. If I am impartial, people are going to trust me, so citizens are going to trust me. And confidentiality and protecting the sensitive information, this is also another aspect, because trustworthiness in the public service is that there are some aspects I am taking a oath and I have to fulfill that oath, and in that oath, maintaining that confidentiality, whatever the inputs I give, whatever the advice I give to the ministry, I have to maintain that confidentiality. Even though my political ideologies does not match, I still have to maintain that confidentiality. So in civil services, I have to maintain that confidentiality, I have to protect the sensitive information. And if there are any misconduct, it is not only me, even in my office, in my administrative setup, if somebody is doing some wrong thing, then I have to report that also, I have to report that misconduct also. So reporting misconduct and upholding the law, even when it is difficult or unpopular, even there is an obstruction, even there is challenging situation, even if it's unpopular, you have to uphold you have to report the misconduct, and you have to uphold the truth, you have to uphold the trust. So these are the ways trustworthiness, this is going to be manifested in public services. So this is first part of the question, and the next part of the question is fortitude, and again you have to write it how exactly this is going to be manifested in public services, right? And what is fortitude? Fortitude, it is courageous, it is fearlessness. Again, you have to explain it from a public service perspective. And a public service perspective, a fortitude is that I am sticking on to opinion, or I am sticking on to a necessary decision, even if it is unpopular, even if it is challenging, even if there is an adversity. I still stick on to it, I still raise my voice. As an example, there is a bad policy from a politician, and this politician has politician is implementing this policy, politician is formulating this policy only for the vote bank politics. He knows that this is going to make particular community happy, and if I make them happy, they are going to vote for me. Maybe they are in that particular constituency, they are the majority, so I have to make them happy. By making them happy, they are going to help me in the election. So here what happens, you are an officer, and even though there will be section of people, they are going to question you, they are not going to be in favor if you object this policy implementation, if you object this policy formulation. But if I am objecting it, it means that I have that fortitude, I have that courage. I know that if I object to this politician, he is going to trouble me, it is going to impact my promotion, it is going to impact my transfer, but still I am raising my voice because I have the attitude of fortitude. So fortitude, it is a mental strength. Even if there is an difficulty, even if there is an adversity, you stick on to your values, you stick on to your convictions until and unless it is legal, then it is fortitude. And just for the sake of rejecting or arguing, if you stick to all these things, you will be called as an obstructionist. This is going to impact your day-to-day working or your contribution to the civil services, right? So that is the example. And for the trustworthiness, there is an example. For trustworthiness, time period you have committed to build some infrastructure, and you have to build that infrastructure, that is the trustworthiness. You have to be consistent, and you have to show that commitment, that is trustworthy. And with respect to fortitude, it is the courage. Here the example is that there is a bad policy by a politician and you are opposing it. You know that how challenging it is, but still you are opposing it, that is fortitude. And again, the next part of the question is, how is it going to be manifested? And it is going to be manifested through the, I have to showcase my fortitude. How exactly you can manifest? There is a political influence, there is a political pressure, and you are going to resist this political influence and political pressure. So here resisting, this shows your moral courage. Resisting, this shows that for value of fortitude. And whatever you are taking a decision, even the decision, it is maybe unpopular, it may be challenging, but still you uphold your decision. As long as it is legal, it is fine. So again, this is also one of the ways to manifest, to show your fortitude. And then the value of perseverance. Perseverance is the commitment for the particular aspect. You have certain goal and there is a commitment, even there are obstacles in that journey. So even in the face of adversities and obstacles, you are showing that attitude of perseverance. And this perseverance is with respect to public service. In the public service, what is the ultimate goal? The welfare of the citizen. Nation cause is the ultimate goal, and your perseverance for the welfare of the citizen, welfare of the society, that shows the fortitude, right? And then maintaining commitment even during crisis. You know that even if I stick on to it, if I stick on to my commitment, then it is going to create my trouble. There is some kind of crisis, but even in that crisis situation also you are sticking on to it. That is nothing but that inner strength, that is nothing but the moral courage. That moral courage is nothing but the fortitude here. And finally, you are working as an IAS officer, and there are powerful lobbies, and these powerful lobbies, they are trying to influence you, maybe financial way or the promotion, or maybe they want to threaten you. No matter what, you are not going to be convinced for a wrong reason. So again, facing powerful lobbies and refusing to compromise. So this is the way the fortitude, it is going to manifest, right? The question talked about trustworthiness, the question talked about fortitude, examples, and then the way it is manifested, right? So let's move to the next question. The next question is, social values are more important than economic values. Discuss the above statement with examples in the context of inclusive economic inclusive growth of a nation. Very simple question. Social values are important than economic values, and you have to substantiate your answers and write the examples also in your discussion, right? Let's get into the discussion of this. Now, first and foremost thing is, what are social values? Social values are the tolerance in the society. Social values, it includes tolerance, equality, justice, compassion. Ultimately, it is community well-being. So, tolerance is the equality, tolerance is justice, tolerance is compassion. Ultimately, it is community well-being. And what are the, we talked about social value. Now, let us talk about economic value. What are the economic values? Economic values, productivity. Economic values, efficiency. Economic values, wealth creation. Economic values, profit making. That is also economic value. So, efficiency, productivity, profit making, these are very important economic values here. Now, the question is, social values are important than economic values. Is it so? Yes, yes, it is important. Social values are more important than economic values. How exactly it is important than economic values? See, in order to have an economic development, social development is very much necessary. The first point, the social values, this is going to create social equity, social equality in the society. This is going to lead to the social justice. When there is a social equity and social justice, this will help in equal distribution of benefits. And our DPSP, Directive Principles of State Policy, it mentions about equal distribution of benefits, social benefits, and this equal distribution happens when there are social values in the society. When there are no social values in the society, we are having economic growth, but what happens, this economic development is concentrated in very few hands of the people. Very few sections of the society, they are getting the advantage. It is not every part of the society. For that reason, we need social values. It is going to create social equity, it is going to create social justice. And then, for economic development, social infrastructure is extremely important. What are the social infrastructure? Education, healthcare, welfare program. These are the social infrastructure. This social infrastructure is the basis of economic development. So, economic values, before economic values, we need social values, right? And then, for economic development, we need human capital, right? Human capital, knowledge, all these things. But in order to have a strong human capital, you need to have a social capital. Social capital is nothing but how you treat other individual and the respect you have for other individual. These are the initial stages of economic growth. So, social capital, then comes human capital, finally comes economic development. So, for the economic development, the social values are necessary. Even third point is also talking about the same thing. For a long-term economic development, we should focus on social capital. And another thing is, only focusing on social value, what happens? It is going to create inequality in the society. Inequality, it is going to create disparities, it is going to create inequality. Take an example of India's GDP only. India's GDP mainly driven by service sector, and here service sector, it is not generating humongous employment opportunities in the country. The growth, the economic growth is good, but at the same time, more than almost around 20% of the population, it is still below poverty line in our country. It still says that there is still very large section of the people, they are under the poverty line. Why is it happening? Just because of this aspect only. Economic values, it is creating inequality, it is creating disparity if you don't focus on social values. See, that is another reason social values are more important than economic values. And then, if I told you that it focus on only on economic value, there will be inequality. This inequality, it is going to disturb social cohesion. This inequality, it is going to disturb social stability. When there is no social stability, it is going to impact the economic security, financial security of a country also. So, in order to have financial security, social security is important. How do you get that social security? Through the social stability, through the social cohesion. So, again, economic values, it is not the economic values, the social values that are important than economic values. And finally, if you look at the economic values, I told you that it is a wealth creation. In that process of wealth creation, we don't think of resource utilization or protection of resources, protection of environment. It is a social values. They talk about environment sustainability. They talk about sustainable development. They talk about an economic model of sustainable inclusive development. So, social values protect environment. If environment is not protected, the resource in the future, there will be crisis there. So even from that perspective, even from the future perspective also, we need social values. Ultimately, the social values, it is going to create social safety nets in the society, and it is going to lead to the inclusive development. So these are the reasons that tells that social values are important than economic values, right? Let's move to the next question. The next question is, some recent developments such as introduction of RTI, media, judicial activism, etc. are providing helpful in bringing about greater transparency and accountability in the functioning of government. So the recent initiatives, they have given some of the initiatives, recent developments like RTI, very strong media, judiciary, judicial activism. These are all creating transparency and accountability in the functioning of government. So these are creating transparency and accountability in the government. This is one part. Then the next part of the question, it is telling that, however, it is also being observed that at times the mechanism is misused. The same mechanism of RTI, media, judicial activism, the same mechanisms are misused also. One side, it is helping the government to become transparent, to become accountable. Another side, the same aspect, it is being misused. Now, another negative effect is that the officers are now afraid to take prompt decision. When it is misused, now officers are also worried, the civil servants are also worried, public administrators are also worried that it is going to impact us in a negative way. So now they are doing a safe game, they are playing a safe game, they are not involved in any risk taking behavior, they are not even involved in any innovation. Now analyze the situation in detail and suggest how this dichotomy is that one side it is positive, another side it is negative, how do you deal with that? So suggest how the dichotomy can be resolved, suggest how these negative impacts can be minimized. So this is the question. So first part of the question, you address how exactly RTI, media, judicial activism, these recent developments, this is increasing transparency and accountability. That is the first part of the question. This is the demand of the first part of the question. So the transparency and accountability factor is enhanced by all these recent development through these reasons. The first is, there is a time bound response. Take an example of RTI only. Within 15 days or something, if you file an RTI, there is a time period, time restrictions are there. It is mandatory on the public information officer to give the information. So there is a time bound response. Because of this time bound response, this is increasing the transparency, this is increasing the accountability of the government. And another aspect is, there is a mandatory responsibility. If we talked about judicial activism, if judiciary gives direction, it is mandatory on these governmental bodies to take that responsibility to get that work done. So again, mandatory responsibility, it is going to impact transparency, it is going to impact the accountability. Mandatory responsibility is there, so it is going to improve the accountability factor. And then now reports are available and everything is online now, and there is a media usually take up these reports of every single department. Usually once a year they place in front of the parliament. Before that, we never used to know what exactly in the report. Whatever only source between government information and people, it was only the newspaper, later television news channels. Now it has been extended to social media, all these things. Now availability of these report happens because of media, because of social media, because of all these electronic agents, electronic easy transfer of documents. So this is also making government transparent and accountable. And finally, the civic participation, people participation, it is also increasing. I can take an example of RTI only. So even by paying 10 rupees, I can get any government information. So again, people participation, civilian participation, it is also increasing in the government. Because of this reason also, transparency and accountability factor, it is strengthened with respect to the government. So the first part of the question, RTI, media introduced, providing helpful in bringing transparency and accountability. So first part of the question we have answered it, that is we have given reasons why it is increasing transparency and accountability. The next part of the question, it is also being observed that at times mechanisms are misused. How exactly it is misused, that is the second aspect. The reasons you have to give, the frivolous complaints, the unnecessary RTI application, unnecessary complaints. We have a vigilance bodies also. You are complaining for no reasons. So unnecessary frivolous applications, frivolous complaints, that is impacting the administration. The department is busy answering these things rather focusing on the real issues. So here mechanisms are misused, and again you use these media, use judicial activism as a tool to blackmail an officer, as a tool to harass the officer. Now because of this, they are scared. Officer, if I am an officer, then I will play a safe game. Why do I have to become a media attraction now? So this is another way, harassment and blackmail, where you are misusing these aspects. RTA, all these things are misused here. And then under the RTA or even through the media, you are focusing on the personal information of an officer. See, you have to focus only on the public information, not the personal information. You are manipulating this, you are trying to get some personal information. Again, this is going to impact the officers there, this is going to impact the public administration. Again, the mechanisms are misused here. And then media trial, sensationalization of news, manipulated news, fake news, and fabricated news. These are another reasons where these aspects are misused, and again it is impacting transparency and accountability. And finally, judicial overreach. We are talking about judicial activism. Judicial activism is fine, but here what is happening, it is crossing over to the judicial overreach, and even it is guiding legislation also how to work. Again, the difference has to be maintained, but here judicial activism is misused, it is transgressing into a judicial overreach. So this is how the mechanisms are misused here, right? First we talked about how exactly transparency and accountability factor is enhanced, and this, with the same thing, with the same recent developments, some of the aspects are misused also. We have talked that also. Finally, the final part of the question suggests how these negative impacts can be minimized. So, and how to solve this dichotomy and suggest the measures here. So let's talk about the measures to avoid this dichotomy. Dichotomy, one side there is a positive advantage, another side there is a negative problem here. How do you balance these positives and negatives? You have to give some suggestions. The suggestion, let's see the suggestions here. See, the dichotomy can be resolved or negative impacts can be minimized. The first and foremost thing is, take an example of RTI only. One side I tell you that I have legal, I am a citizen of the country, I have that legal authority. I can file as many RTI application as I want. There is a legal backing for my argument. Yes, you can file any number, there is no restriction. That is one side of argument. Another side of argument from the civil services. Now civil servants are telling that all these frivolous RTIs, this is disturbing our work. We have to focus our energy, we have to focus our time answering all these frivolous application. Again, two set of arguments are there. Now who is going to decide? The decision, that there is a dichotomy again here. Who is going to solve this dichotomy? It is going to be solved by the independent committee. See, if I am civil servant, I feel that there is an unnecessary application coming up, and I am a citizen, I think that this my right, I can ask anything, whatever I want. Now this tussle, this dichotomy has to be solved by independent committee. This independent committee, it is going to take a decision. When there is a crisis, independent commission comes into picture. They are going to take a decision. By doing that, they are going to solve the dichotomy, right? And this is also a measure to deal with this kind of situation. And then for every new bodies, here in this question we talked about RTI, we talked about media, we talked about judicial activism, all these things. In future there might be few more bodies also. So for all these new bodies, there should be a clear guidelines, and these bodies should follow these clear guidelines in their working. So clear guidelines should be there for all these new bodies, right? And there should be ethical responsibilities also for all these new bodies. Sorry, I got confused with, again same thing applies, clear guidance and ethical responsibility. For media, they have a ethical responsibility and they have to follow that ethical responsibility. For the existing bodies, and even in future if some other new bodies comes, they also have to follow the ethical bodies here. Now, develop clear guidance that support transparency and guide address harassment. I told you that the harassment, manipulation, it is happening. We need to have a clear guideline. That guideline should distinguish between harassment, maintaining transparency one side, and another side this is harassment. We should never cross to the harassment, so there should be a clear guidelines to mention that, right? And de-hyphenization of risk-taking attitude and malevolent intention. If I have some evil intentions, see, people are accusing that this officer has only evil intention. Whatever the decision he make, it is based on evil intention. And officer is telling that this is my risk-taking attitude, and people are blaming me, but my intentions are genuine. This is my innovation. This is my risk-taking behavior. Two set of arguments. Now you should be in a position to understand which is risk-taking attitude and which is evil intention. So the de-hyphenization, it is required. And then if there are honest officers in the administration, it is your responsibility. See, within the administration, people know that who is honest, who is dishonest. They know all these minute details. So it is responsibility to protect these honest officers and also focus on capacity building of others. So by doing this also, you can solve the dichotomy. And another thing is, we talked about judicial activism. One concept is judicial activism, another is judicial overreach. There should be clear distinction between judicial overreach and judicial activism. So even judiciary also should make this distinction that I am not crossing over to the judicial overreach. So that distinction, judiciary has to do it. So by doing this, it can solve the dichotomy there. And then finally, ethical and responsible use of tools by civil society. See, now technology is there. Use these technology, whether it is new applications, new tools, new techniques, or artificial intelligence. Use these tools and techniques and make sure that everything is ethical, everything is responsible. When the use is ethical and responsible, again you can solve the dichotomy. So this is how the dichotomy can be resolved. This is how the negative impacts can be minimized. So this is with respect to the question, the recent development. One side RTI, media, judicial activism, that is one side. They are helping that government with respect to transparency and accountability. On the other side, it is being misused. Now there is a dichotomy. One side you need it, another side the aspects are misused. How to deal? How do you deal with that? How do you solve the issues? These are the ways to solve the dichotomy, right? Let's move to the next one. The next is two different kinds of attitudes exhibited by public servants towards their work have been identified as bureaucratic attitude and democratic attitude. Civil servants usually they observe two kinds of attitude. One is bureaucratic attitude, second one is a democratic attitude. Now the sub questions: distinguish between two terms. Tell what exactly bureaucratic attitude, tell what exactly democratic attitude, and write their merits and demerits. And the next thing is it possible to balance to create a better administration for a faster development? Is it possible to balance that thing? If it is yes, give the reasons. If it is no, give the reasons. Now let's talk about bureaucratic attitude and the democratic attitude. What exactly the bureaucratic attitude? Bureaucratic attitude, these are the value system that are required in the bureaucracy. And see, usually bureaucratic attitude, these are hierarchy, maintaining that hierarchy, following the formal procedures, and adherence to the rules and regulation. See, you have to maintain the rules and regulation, and you have to focus on hierarchy, and whatever the principles, procedures are there, formal procedures have to be followed, and there is a consistency and there is a predictability, because everything is iron framework. You have to follow this. Even the single signature, you have to make it on a file. You have to follow the formal procedure. You have to follow the established law. You have to follow the established regulation. So there is a predictability, there is a consistency with respect to bureaucratic attitude, and ultimately this is going to maintain that public order. So there will not be any arbitrariness, and this is going to maintain order in public administration. These are the merits. And what are the demerits here? Demerits is that it is very rigid. It means that you have to follow this order only. There is no subjectivity in the bureaucratic order. So there is a rigidity, there is an inflexibility and lack of innovation, because strict formal procedures are there. You have to follow this. So lack of innovation and dehumanization. There is no place for human values and human emotions. So this is with respect to bureaucratic attribute. Now democratic attitude. Democratic attitude is one democratic attitude which supports democratic values. Democratic value is nothing but people participation, citizen centric administration, citizens approach, citizens involvement in the administration. So these are values and ideals which are necessary to protect the democracy. The values which protect democracy, those values are called democratic values here. And it mainly focuses on public service, it mainly focuses on aspirations of the people. Democracy, it is nothing but by the people, of the people, for the people. So it is a people centric administration, people centric approach. Here aspiration of the people, it is the first preference, it is the public service is the first preference here. And again, this will, what are the merits? Merits is, it is going to lead to the citizen centric approach. So priority is citizen, priority, it is the citizen centric approach, and then it is going to enhance the citizen participation. So citizen participation, it is going to be enhanced. And we see the demerit also. In the demerit, what happens? The vote bank politics is there in the democratic approach. Populism. So somewhere it has written populism, and everything. There is an excessive consultation even for the policy formulation. There are two factions. One faction is saying yes, another faction is saying no. Again, what happens? The consultation process is very large and time consuming. Eventually it might lead to the policy paralysis also. So populism, whoever vote bank is stronger, you are catering that particular group. It is not the legal basis, it is more of vote bank basis. So populism and potential for inconsistency. One government came, it has come up with a particular policy, and the next government with different political ideology, this is eliminating this particular step. So inconsistency is there. So excessive consultation, tendency towards populism, potential inconsistency, these are some of the demerits of democratic attitudes, right? Now the next part of the question is it possible to balance both the two? Bureaucratic attitude, democratic attitude, is it possible to balance, and how exactly? If it is yes, then how exactly balance? Let's see the aspect. Yes, it is possible to balance and create a better administration. How do you balance? What is the approach you need to follow? Now balance, it means that some of the elements of bureaucratic attitude should be there, and some elements of democratic attitude should be there. So the bureaucratic approach should be merged with democratic ethos. By doing this, you are creating a balance, and combination of rule of law, that is one side, and foundational values on the other side. Rule of law, you're not supposed to compromise with rule of law. This gives the external accountability. At the same time, if you have foundational values, that gives you internal accountability. So balance has been created. At the same time, administration, one side we focus on efficient administration, on the other side of democratic attitude, it is people centric leadership, because democratic attitude itself is the people participation. People is going to elect the leaders, people, they are called people representatives, MP, MLAs. So one side people centric leadership, another side it is administration, the civil servant. So balance of their opinion, balance of their contribution, that is also balancing of bureaucratic attitude and the democratic attitude. And then one side there is a bureaucratic objectivity, another side we have a democratic fairness. Bureaucratic objectivity plus democratic fairness. So eventually this will lead to the justice. So combination of both, balancing of both, ultimately lead to the justice. And finally, one side there is a bureaucratic commitment. Commitment is that I will be in office from 9 to 5 o'clock. But dedication, it is a democratic value. Dedication, it means that in the time period of 9 to 5, my only objective is for the welfare of the people. I am going to work for the people, that is commitment. So combination of commitment and the dedication. So this is how you can balance both by bureaucratic attitude as well as the democratic values, right? So that was the question. Let me see it again. Yes, balancing the two to create a better administration for a faster development of the country. This answers the fifth question. Let's move to the next one. The sixth question. Today we find that in spite of various measures of prescribing codes of conduct, setting up of vigilance cells, commissions, RTI, active media, and strengthening of legal mechanisms. Corrupt practices are not coming under control. See, we are coming with new initiatives. RTI, there is a code of conduct, and it is talking about vigilant bodies, it is talking about active media and legal mechanisms. All these things are there. Still corruption is not going away from administration. Now what do you do? How do you deal with it? Question is that evaluate the effectiveness of these measures. All these measures which are mentioned here, you have to evaluate the effectiveness of these measures with justification. And the second part is suggest more effective strategies to tackle these menace. So there are two aspects. The first, whatever they have mentioned, you evaluate the effectiveness and then you suggest measures. So let's get into the discussion of this. The first aspect, the first part of the question, it is talking about we have all these things, code of conduct, vigilance, all these things we have. Even after having all these things, corruption is not coming under control. Corruption is rampantly practiced. Now what is the reasons behind it? You have to analyze it. See, first, code of conduct. We have code of conduct for almost all the organization, for public administration, every bodies, we have code of conduct. Code of conduct we have, but what about the enforcement practices? Do we have the enforcement mechanism? We don't have a strong, strict enforcement mechanism. We have code of conduct, that is fine. This is going to guide your day-to-day action, but enforcement, there is no enforcement. That is the issue here. And we have vigilance bodies and commissions. We have CVC, we have Lokpal, we have CBI. All these vigilance bodies are there. But the thing is there any autonomy to it? There is no autonomy to it. There is no functional autonomy, because the appointing authority is ruling party. The government, it is going to appoint the members of vigilance bodies, CBI, CVC, everything. So do you think they will be 100% neutral, 100% impartial? They will not be. And then RTI in a step is good. It is going to increase the transparency. But what is happening now is the public information commissioners, they are giving misleading information, they are giving manipulating information. You are asking for some information, what you are receiving is a bunch of information where you cannot deduct any conclusion. So misleading, manipulating information, it is increasing now. And then media activism. Question is talking about there is a strong media in the country, but the reality behind that media is this media is controlled by corporate houses, this media is controlled by political parties, this media is controlled by persons with vested interest or some political ideologies. See, because of this political and corporate control on media, even this is also being ineffective in curbing the corruption. See, if a right-wing party, they are supporting some of the media houses, left-wing parties are supporting some of the media houses, and if right-wing government, state governments make some mistake, the left-wing, they are going to raise the issue, and the another group, they are going to ignore. The same thing, if left-wing or left-oriented government, state government make a mistake, the right-wing news media houses, they are going to raise the issue, other faction, they are going to ignore the issue. These kind of things happen. See, do you think it is going to address the real concern of corruption? It is not. There is vested interest behind the media activism also. So that is the reason. And then we have a legal mechanism. We have a statutory rules and regulation, regulatory bodies, controls, all these things are there. But the thing is, these are slow and time consuming. Even if you approach the court, even if you approach the judiciary, it is going to take years and years to get a final verdict. So it is slow, it is time consuming, and conviction rates in the corruption cases, it's very, very low in the country. So because of all these things, even though despite having all these things, corruption is not coming under the control. So this is first part of the question. And the next part of the question, you have to suggest the effective strategies. Effective strategies you have to suggest it here. The first and foremost is that let's take up those bodies only. So we talked about vigilance bodies, and I told you that there is no functional autonomy. Now how do you give that functional autonomy? Functional autonomy will be given if there is an independent and autonomous body that is involved in appointment of members, appointment of chairpersons, appointment and also transfer of these members. So independent autonomous bodies should appoint the members of these vigilant bodies. So independent autonomous bodies, they should be involved in appointment process, transfer process, promotion, all these things. And then we talked about code of conduct, but enforcement is not there. Now it is ethical responsibility on administration. It is administration responsibility to have a strict enforcement of code of conduct. So strict enforcement of code of conduct should be there, and we have a public information officers. In the last point we talked about giving manipulative information, misleading information. Now these public information officers, they should have that moral responsibility, they should have that ethical responsibility to follow RTA in letter and spirit. And then we talked about media. Media, the ethical journalism should be there. This ethical journalism, it should focus on one is neutrality and impartiality. So journalism, it should be ethical, it should focus on neutrality, it should focus on political impartiality. And value-based education, sensitive training should be imparted to the public officials. Value-based education and the sensitive training should be given to the public officials. And finally, the values of transparency, responsibility, accountability should be there for citizen participation in administration. If we have this value system, then people will be develop the trust, there will be trust factor, trustworthiness in administration. When people participation, citizen participation is there, then it will help in curbing the corruption. So these are the way, these are the new strategies or innovative strategies to deal with the corruption, right? So that would be sufficient for this question. Let's move to the next one. The next question is that at international level, bilateral relations between most nations are governed on policy of promoting one's own national interest without any regard for the interest of other nations. Usually the bilateral relationship or the multilateral relationship, it is based on self-interest. I am signing some treaty with some other country because there is a self-interest involved in me. I am not thinking about other country, I am thinking about my country, and the agreement has to serve my purpose. So this is the intention. So this is what happening in the world. Now this leads to a conflict. Usually what happens, I am signing treaty for my self-interest. Every country does this way. This leads to a conflict and this leads to a tension between nations. So this is going to create trouble between two countries. I am telling something, other country is not accepting, other country is telling something, I am not accepting. So this is creating some kind of conflict, this is creating some kind of tension here. How can ethical consideration help resolve such tensions? Considering ethical aspects in international relationship, how can it resolve such tensions? You have to give the reasons and also discuss with specific examples. In every question, example is must and should. Right? Let's get into the discussion of this. Now the first part, bilateral relationship of most of the country, it is based on self-interest. And reasons, let's see the reasons here. These are the reasons. Bilateral relation between most of the countries governed on the policy of promoting its own national interest without any regard for the interest of other nation. The reason is that one country, if there is a country A, take an example of China. China is signing a lot of treaties with the African continent, countries in the African continent. The main intention here is that it is not to help these countries, it is not help these African countries. Intention is to get the resources, the natural resources in that country, the nuclear energy, the uranium, plutonium, all these things are there, and it want, or rare earth elements, all these things are there. China want to exploit that. In order to explore and exploit these resources, it is signing these agreement. And better trade deals, it means that see, India is negotiating with UK. Now UK want Indian access. India very strong market is there. So in UK want to have that market access of India. India wants that access to the European countries. So both the sides there is a self-interest. For the relationship, we are signing this trade agreement between two countries, but the thing is, intention is not to have a good cordial relationship. Intention is to have better trade deals. So I am focusing on my self-interest, you are focusing on your self-interest. And most of the times these international relationship, the bilateral relationship, focus on one more thing, that is voting in international bodies. Like in UN bodies, voting is very important. See, China is building a lot of infrastructure, or it is giving a lot of funding and loans to these small island countries. The economic feasibility is very low with these island nations, but the thing is, every single small island nation, they have one vote in United Nations organization, and this is going to help the China. So intention is that you want some support from these countries. That is why you are developing a relationship. You are not developing that relationship for the sake of value of friendship, value of helping each other. It is not the case. It is for some self-interest. Again, there is a grouping, there are BRICS, and there is G7, G20, these kind of groupings are there. Now you are developing by relationship with another country, thinking that to include that country into the grouping, to make your faction stronger. Now there is a faction of Russia, there is a faction of USA, there is a faction of China. Now countries are joining either this or that. Here intention is to make your faction stronger. Intention is not to help each other, intention is to make your group stronger. And another is you are expecting a loan, grant, subsidy from a country, or you want some military support or military equipments from other countries. For that reason you are developing this relationship with another country. So these are the reasons bilateral relationship is focused on self-interest. Right, now the next part of the question is that how do you resolve this kind of tension, how do you resolve this kind of attitude, and you have to use that, you have to answer from ethical perspective. How do you solve it? The first and foremost aspect here, that you have to follow the principle of equality. Principle of equality. Principle of equality, what exactly it does is that both of me, if I am signing, I am one country signing treaty with other country or having that discussion, it has to be on the principle of equality, that both are equal. Based on that equality, you are involving in the negotiations. And as an example, take that climate change negotiations. Developed countries are telling something, developing countries are telling something. Neither developed countries are accepting what developing countries are telling, and developing countries are accepting what developed countries are telling. There is a trust deficit because they think that there is no principle of equality. Developing countries are telling that there is no principle of equality here. Again, developed countries are giving some other argument here. So principle of equality should be there, then you can solve this issue. The hidden agenda behind the relationship, that can be solved. And when the negotiations happens, whether it is trade deals or for any other thing, it should be based on ethical values. And whatever the treaties you make, everything should be based on the ethical values here. Whether it is treaties, whether you negotiations, everything, ethical values should be there. That should be the base. Based on these moral principles, you develop the treaties. That is the thing. And the third thing is, you have to respect the sovereignty of other country, you have to respect the freedom of other countries, you have to non-interference, you should not interfere in internal affairs. So this is mentioned in non-alignment movement, this is mentioned in Panchsheel agreement. So the core values of non-alignment movement, Panchsheel, that has to be implemented at the international level, at the bilateral relationship. This is by doing this also you can eliminate this vested interest. And then when there is a crisis, there are issues. Usually in the world we have refugee crisis, environmental crisis, a lot of disaster management, all these happens. Whenever you help other country in these kind of crisis, in these kind of situation, make sure that you are helping with altruistic intentions. You are not expecting anything in return. As an example, you can give, during the COVID time, India was distributing vaccines to the underdeveloped countries. See, India was not expecting anything from these countries, African countries, Southern American countries, but we ourselves, we don't had enough vaccination in the country, but still India took a positive step. India helped all these countries. So your relationship, there should be an altruistic intention. It means that genuine intention to other country. So example is that India's COVID vaccine distribution. And then ultimately, at the international level, the global policy, it has to be based on shared responsibility. That our responsibility is with respect to humanity, our responsibility is with respect to human rights. So moral responsibility to reduce the human suffering, to protect the human rights. As an example, global food program, food security program by United Nations, by Food and Agricultural Organization. So it has to be based on these principles. And ultimately, whatever the global policies you make sure that there is a mutual beneficiary. Not one side benefits, it should not be there. Shared responsibility, mutual benefit should be there. There should be mutual benefit, there should be a shared responsibility in the global policies. When you implement all these things, you can eliminate the self-interest aspect in the international relationship, right? This would be sufficient for this question. Let's move to the last question. The last question is that public servants are likely to confront with issue of conflict of interest. The direct question, you have to explain the conflict of interest and what do you understand by the term conflict of interest and how does it manifest in the decision making by public servant. How does it manifest? That you give the reason, 3-4 reasons, and then if faced with the conflict of interest situation, how would you resolve it? How do you resolve the conflict? How it is going to manifest in the administration, then how do you resolve it? This is the question, simple question, direct question, right? What is the conflict of interest? Conflict of interest is that I have certain personal interest and this personal interest, it is influencing my official duty. So it is the situation where I have my I am a public servant, I have my personal interest and this is impacting my official duty. This is conflict of interest. And conflict of interest, there are 3 types. The first is actual conflict of interest. In that actual conflict of interest, I am a civil servant and I have called for a tender, and one of my family members, they have applied for the tender. Now I am in the position of decision maker, so here actual conflict of interest exists. See, one thing you have to remember, conflict of interest, action is not taken, it's there. Conflict of interest, next whatever you do, that is the extension of conflict of interest. So here decision has not been made, but conflict of interest is there. Now perceived conflict of interest, as an example, I am a director of industries and commerce. Now I am holding a share of particular company, maybe 20 lakh share of particular company. Now the same company, the file comes to your table. Now whatever decision you take, that is going to impact the company, and if you take very strict action, the share price, it is going to go down. If you don't do it, share price is going to go up. Again, there is a perceived conflict of interest. There is no direct conflict of interest. Perceived conflict of interest is there. And finally, potential conflict of interest, it means that in future there is a possibility of conflict of interest. So these are the 3 ways of conflict of interest. The next part is that how it is going to be manifested. That is the next part. And how exactly it is going to be manifested. See, if you are about to make a decision where there will be biased allocation of resources to your family member, to your close friends or family member, from this way it can be manifested. Or if there is a political affiliations, or if there is a, you are allowing political affiliations, you are allowing personal ideologies in your administration, that will also going to lead to the conflict of interest. Or if you are hiring, or if there are promotions are based on personal relationship, or you are helping the friends, family, then also conflict of interest, it is going to manifest. And policy influence for a potential future gains. You are thinking of implementing some policy for the future gains. These are the ways conflict of interest, it is going to be manifested in public service. Now, how do you manage this conflict of interest? The first and foremost thing to manage the conflict of interest is, the first priority should be the public interest. See, I am an IAS officer and I am calling for a tender. My family members also applying the tender. Now my focus is the best, the tender, the best approach. Or there are 10 people who have submitted their proposal, and I am going to select that proposal based on the objectivity. It is not because of my family members I am supporting this. Here priority is that public interest. So in my decision making, I give priority to the public interest. By doing this, I can manage the conflict of interest. Then support transparency and public scrutiny. Whatever the official decisions I make, it has to be transparent. When it is transparent, it is open for public scrutiny. And make sure that you implement foundational values, foundational value of honesty, integrity, probity. If you have these things, obviously your priority is public interest. So foundational values are the basis to handle the conflict of interest. When you have these foundational values, you are not going to compromise. Ultimately, the priority is the welfare of the people. So this is also another way of handling things. And then At individual level also you have to have certain responsibilities. So promoting individual responsibility and setting yourself as an example or following the role model, that is also one of the ways to handle the conflict of interest. And finally, there should be guidelines, there should be policies, there should be procedures. There should be procedures, policies and the practices to control and management of conflict of interest. Guidelines should be there. How do you handle it? This is not the first time the civil servants are facing the conflict of interest. From the beginning there is a conflict of interest. How do you deal with it? There should be established procedure, there should be established code of conduct, there should be established practices. How do you handle with it? That should be there, that guideline should be there. This is from a government side. So this is how you manage the conflict of interest here. Again, this covers the entire topic here. The question is conflict of interest and how it is going to manifest in the decision making in public servants, and finally how do you handle this. For 10 marks, 4 points are more than enough. Conflict of interest maybe 2 marks and another 4 marks for the how does it manifest, another 4 marks for the how do you handle that final one conclusion. So that would be sufficient, and write the examples also. I have given example for actual perceived potential conflict of interest, so that would be sufficient for the particular question. So this covers the section A of 2015 ethics paper. Now in the next video we are going to take up the case studies. Section B, there are 7 case studies. We are going to take up the case studies also, and thank you for listening. I'll see you guys in the next video. Please watch the next video also to solve the case studies. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys again. Have a good time.